back once again with our attempt to drive toward the peninsula. Looks like as we press play here, we got Wilcox heading down to engage the Army of the Potomac. This has recently suffered a defeat, so I'm hoping it just retreats, but we'll see. We're trying to get down here before this siege finishes up. It's still a little bit in our favor. It keeps changing a little bit, but it looks like the Army of the Shenandoah here is also moving. So, I wonder what's going on. Looks like it's not joining the siege. It's deploying defensively here. My Army of the Ohio is moving down toward Newmarket. Yep, and we are pushing the Army of the Potomac away. And luckily, it's heading away from the peninsula. So, I have to... Wilcox has to stop. He has to rest for a little while, at the very least. And we ought to wait a bit more. I'm going to send Sherman down here to snag this supply depot. And I'm going to destroy these Sesh depots here. I'm going to use this one for now, and I'm going to destroy the Staunton depot when I get down there. So it looks like we are pushing them away on all fronts. We've cleared up quite a lot of the problem here in northern Virginia. We can drive a little bit south down the Rappahannock, or south of the Rappahannock, and it's looking like the Army of the Shenandoah and the 5th Corps under Sherman might actually be able to make it down here to influence the Battle of the Peninsula and to move on Richmond. So we'll see. This is going to be a big battle no matter what. And you've likely already seen my computer is not necessarily up to the task at all times. So. Okay, he's in a good spot to get his readiness back up. He needs to be at least in yellow. Oh, this is unbearable. Just waiting like this. These two armies could move at any time. And we are suffering casualties in this siege. And again, it's holding fairly steady in our favor. Casualties are fairly light on both sides so far. What's this? Officer rehabilitated. It looks like the Florida State Guard here, 3,000 men, is coming over here to challenge the 5th Corps. Rehabilitated. Joseph Haskin. Let's find out who that was. Joe Haskin. He was commander of the 1st Cavalry, 1st Division, Department of Missouri. All right. Okay, Florida State Guard or Florida State Militia. I don't know what they're thinking here. Okay. The Florida State Militia is going to pull in the Army of Northern Virginia. About 12,000 men. They'll be there in 10 hours. The 5th Corps is going to stand alone here for 4 hours before the Army of the Shenandoah arrives. And that might be a little bit weird, too. Let's see what my weapon order was. 10,000 Joslin rifled carbines. Great. Excellent. I'll put those into my cavalry brigades right after this battle. So let's do it. All right, Battle of Fredericksburg. Fredericksburg, Virginia, facing the Army of Northern Virginia under the command of Leonidas Polk with a strength of some 13,000 men and a single gun. Enemy army is green, morale is stable. Supply state of our army is outstanding. And again, oh, well, all right, that's fine. 5th Corps, yep, as I suspected. I think poor Wilcox over here will likely be unable to join most of the fun. But this isn't going to be a hard fight. Sherman will be able to do this just fine. What a decent sight of my artillery. Yeah, these guys are, their morale is already really low. My parrots a chance to see some action. It's pretty exciting. We've got Israel B. Richardson, another Michigan native here in Sherman's 5th Corps. Get him up there. I might make him a division commander sometime soon. He's good enough for it. All right, and let the show begin. And there's no need to waste time. I'm just driving in here, being aggressive, knocking out these weekly. Yep, they're already withdrawing. So see if I can push these men up to cause as many casualties as I can. Get both of those cavalry to get up there as soon as I can. Double time everybody else. Artillery's not gonna have much time to play, unfortunately. But let's get it. Let's get it in there. See what we can do. Those cripplingly slow division orders. I don't think I would be able to catch almost anything. I'll be able to snap up these guns. They're just Gatling guns, unfortunately. Boy, they really zipped out of there, didn't they? Taking a pretty big risk over here with Gibbon. Not sure he'll even be able to catch up to this unit. If he does, he's getting the debuff from being cut off because he's quite far away. I would not be surprised if he were to break. For now, he's causing casualties. That's good. Maybe we can grab up some prisoners here. Oh. Causing some casualties, but our charge wasn't hitting. So there you have it, a pretty inconsequential skirmish. All right. Victory at Fredericksburg. Army of Northern Virginia withdraws. So that ought to keep this little portion of the army busy for a while. And it is withdrawing. They're withdrawing cross paths here. They're getting in each other's way, withdrawing. All right, Wilcox is up to yellow readiness. I'm just going to sort of leapfrog him down here onto the rail. And I'm really hoping they can both get up into sort of high yellow readiness before... They can't be coming after me again, can they? We just had this battle. How is their readiness repaired again? Oh well, well, okay. So I'm gonna fight this battle, and you'll get to see me fight this battle. But let me take this opportunity once again to illustrate the fact that the relationship between what you select as sort of enemy aggression and what actually happens on the campaign map are two completely different things. This is once again the lowest aggression setting that the game had, or at least I think mediocre. And we've already had something like 50 full-scale battles in just over a year and a half. A little over a year, 14 months, let's say. And again, we get these guys, they just fought a battle. Well, I suppose what's going on is the Army of Northern Virginia didn't actually enter the field, and so they didn't get their readiness impacted by that battle. That's what's going on. And the Florida State Militia is nearby. They're on friendly territory, so even if their readiness is lowered, they're able to reinforce the army. That's what's going on. Still, they're being pretty aggressive, and this is a situation, I suppose, that calls for it, right? They don't want this force getting down here toward Richmond. They obviously don't. And because if my force gets down here by Richmond, this force of 70,000 or so that's going after the Army of the Potomac, I might be able to influence that. So they don't want me to stop. So it's a good strategic move. It's a desperate strategic move, but it's a good one. So let's get into it and let's see what happens. All right, we got basically we have a really similar deployment as last time. They're coming in from a different angle here, so I'll likely have an opportunity to get Wilcox involved in this battle here. And I guess the choice I have to make is whether or not I want to try to ambush them on their route of march, which will be down this central road. There's almost no other option here. Or if I want to let them march in and provide a more open field of fire for my artillery, and hopefully draw them into a larger scale engagement. The problem that I have here is so this is Mary's Heights, right? This is the Fredericksburg map. These are Mary's Heights. These are the famous Mary's Heights that were assaulted in the battle, the extremely poorly fought Battle of Fredericksburg in real history. So Mary's Heights, here's the famous stone wall behind Mary's Heights here that was assaulted out of Fredericksburg. And here's possibly the other one. So I could set up on Mary's Heights here if I stop rambling. The problem is if I do that, it gives them they've got this secondary road vein that'll come out here that can sort of circumvent it. So I'm likely to have to set up with an angle in my line and kind of deploy up here in the high ground. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to set up on Mary's Heights, not Wilcox. He's not here yet. Sherman. Get over here, Sherman. Set up my cavalry over here. And yeah, they'll be coming down this sort of road network here. I'll have a very short field of fire for my artillery, for the most part, but it'll be a good one, and they'll have the advantage of the heights. And once again, detaching my batteries. That field of fire doesn't look accurate to where it is. That might fix itself after it gets deployed. We'll see. Most of the fighting is likely going to be done with infantry anyway, so I'm not super worried about the artillery itself, to be quite honest. And my men look a little thin on the ground, to be honest. Sherman's Corps isn't the largest in the Federal Army at this point. Certainly not. This looks all right. Gibbon got his perk last time. We'll give him Stormers. Oh, Zook as well. Give him Zouave. So almost this entire division is Zouave because it's my favorite perk. And I'm going to attempt something over here. I'm going to order them to lie down right on deployment. And I'm hoping that the Secesh will come down this road without being the wiser, and we'll get nicely ambushed by Barnard's division here. And I think after this battle, I mentioned before making Richardson a division commander, and I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to get Barnard out of this position here. He's doing fine. He's fine as a division commander, but he was the chief engineer of the Army of the Potomac during the Peninsula campaign. And so I would actually really like to get John Gross Barnard into the Peninsula. I'd like to get him actually involved in with the Army of the Potomac as they are over in the Peninsula as I can. So I'll probably do that after this battle if I remember to. All right, get my cavalry to head over there. And I'll have to stagger up these marches a little bit. Enemy is withdrawing. So once again, a very anticlimactic battle here. How many rebels can I kill in 4 minutes? Unfortunately, 0. They have withdrawn from the field. Victory once again at Fredericksburg. Army of Northern Virginia withdraw. Enemy suffered a total of 141 casualties, 28 killed and 53 captured. So this must have just been from the skirmishing that we seldom actually see on the screen. But that has impacted my readiness, of course, which is really too bad. So as a brief narration, I moved Sherman's 5th Corps slightly down here, and I'm moving Wilcox down here to keep up. They're going slow because I need to preserve their readiness here. And the Hampton Division has decided with its 15,000 men and 40 guns to challenge my 5th Corps. So it looks like first it's going to be the 5th Corps against the Hampton Division until my Army of the Shenandoah under Wilcox in 7 hours can arrive on the field, and the Army of the Potomac, 20,000 men, in 11 hours. So I have kind of a sneaky plan I want to enact as we start this here. So we're going to play the battle, and I'll outline my strategy as we get in. All right, so we are once again in a silly disposition, but that's just, par for the course for the game as a whole. Anyway, Hampton Division under John B. Magruder, strength of 15,000 men and 39 guns. Like we knew before, enemy morale is stable. Supply state of our army is outstanding. So let me get rid of this stupid headquarters thing for a sec. So we're on the Fredericksburg battlefield once again. And we have a very, very odd deployment. So it looks like I don't actually have to wait 17 hours for the 1st Corps here of the Army of the Shenandoah. Of the Army of the Shenandoah? What army is this? Under Wilcox. Yes, the Army of the Shenandoah. Jeez. I'm losing my mind over here. Okay, here we are. So this is another Battle of Fredericksburg. This is about the 4th or 5th we fought on the same battlefield. Because of the weirdness of the game in general, we have actually both of our armies on the field. And I'm not sure, I'll have to check if the Confederacy has... Nope, they still have 10 hours. So my sneaky plan may not work, because I was actually able to get both corps of my army deployed at once. What I wanted to do essentially was wait until the Army of the Potomac arrived and then begin the attack. Because the Army of the Potomac is not, they don't have enough men to really sway any of the, there's no way they're going to beat me in the field, even if they have all of their men all together. They're going to have 36,000 men all told. I'm going to outnumber them by about 8,000 or so, which is a pretty comfortable lead, right? Pretty comfortable. Yeah, 44,000 so far, and then they'll only have 37,000. So the idea was, again, allow them to come onto the field and then crush them both. And if I do that, it will damage both armies' readiness on the battlefield. If I don't engage both armies, it won't. And so because they're very likely dug in over here, and they're very likely, dug in, right, pretty defensively, but I'm wedged in this corner because the game still hasn't figured out how to do shared deployments, even if armies are right on top of each other. I may not actually have the time to wait for the other army to arrive. But I suppose we'll see. And as we start here, in the meantime, I guess I can talk a little bit about Magruder. So Magruder is actually, I'm glad he's sort of involved in at least a little bit of my weird little peninsula campaign here, because he played a pretty big role in it historically. He was actually the sort of theater commander of the peninsula. And as a result, he sort of led McClellan on sort of like, he did this kind of classic military, what would you call it? A ruse de guerre, right? He sort of went on this kind of classic romp, and he sort of paraded his tiny amount of men back and forth along the peninsula to make it look like he had a much larger army than he had. And McClellan himself was already so willing to believe that the Confederates outnumbered the Army of the Potomac by really significant margins that he was frightened by the whole thing, right? He was totally swindled. And Magruder was actually able to slow down the Army of the Potomac to the extent that, it allowed the Confederates to concentrate forces in a way that they probably should not have been able to do, right? I don't understand why they've suddenly made all of your units so reticent to travel on rails. This I remember in earlier patches being an absolute huge thing. That, like, your guys would love to walk along railroads, and they seem to have basically said no, they don't want to do that anymore. I'm not really sure why. Anyway, that's all. Magruder is sort of a weird guy. They called him Prince John, mostly because he was very ostentatiously dressed most of the time. He threw lavish parties. He once threw a party, and I believe he dressed as the King of Prussia, something like that. Like, he had this extremely fancy uniform made for the occasion specifically. And he had such a reputation as throwing these, like, incredibly huge parties that, people wondered where he got all his money, because all of that stuff cost like a ton of money. Oh boy, poor Seymour. Only gonna get hit by artillery fire, apparently. That's okay. Come on. The enemy is withdrawing. Interesting. So I'm probably not going to be able to beat both armies up as I wanted to, unfortunately. Yeah, there's no way. I'm not going to be able to get close, and I've not done any morale damage to anything, so... Oh, well. Well, you got a cool story about John Magruder. Prince John Magruder. And once again, the Army of the Shenandoah remains triumphant on the battlefield. But I will see you after the jump. All right. So, victory of sorts at Fredericksburg. Again, just pushing these guys away. I very seriously doubt that that will be the last I see of either of these armies. And look at that, the 5th Corps has taken a perk. Because I am moving very quickly, I want to take Flying Column. I want them to have more supplies. I want them to move and march faster. And right now we're actually very close to a hospital. So that's good. So let's check the situation here at the siege. Still going. Casualties are about even. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Army of the Shenandoah actually comes and majorly influences this situation here. Alright, let's advance some time. Wilcox's readiness tanking once again. Really hope we can get him up there. This waiting is just so brutal. Alrighty, so we went about a day until we were interrupted once again by another attack. This time, it's got the Army of the Shenandoah under Joseph E. Johnson, which it says has a strength of 0 men and 0 guns. So big threat over here. But we can look at the Union or the strength report. So all told, eventually, that's 36, about 57,000 men or so. Up against ours, we'll have 44,000 all told. So this actually might end up being a pretty tough battle. Luckily, I have all of my men in my deployment zone, so I can deploy Wilcox right over here. I'd like to deploy his entire army, if I could. There we go. That was weird. And I am still attacking. But I've got all my men together. And I do have the enemy outnumbered in the initial stage of these battles. And I believe that their morale is a lot worse than mine. I don't think it's quite as bad as the tooltip right at the beginning said it was. I don't want to take too many chances, of course, but I don't think it's quite as bad as all that. But like always, I want to be very assertive, very aggressive. I want to get out ahead of any of these threats, and I want to hit them really hard and really fast and don't let up until the battle's over. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I can see them right over here. The victory point is right there. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to start moving. For now, I'll keep the artillery with the units, but as soon as they get firing, I will likely detach them as I normally do. Okay. You can see the enemy actually have some pretty understrength brigades over here. Richardson's the first one to get into position, so I'm going to advance him at the run. And I'm going to advance Zook also at the run, using their Zouave tactics. Boy, I might have to fight most of this battle from this view, because it's a little more stable on my PC. All right, looks like Cadwallader's division here is ready to go in. Gonna get King and Davidson to wrap around. Wingcoop is in position, so I'm gonna throw him forward. All of this may end up being a pretty big mistake, to be perfectly clear here. Being this aggressive may not be what the situation calls for. As it is, I don't want to be outnumbered. I want to preserve as much of my readiness of these two corps as possible, because the goal isn't to just keep fighting these battles with various Confederate armies. The goal is to get closer to Richmond, so that I can support my Army of the Potomac in its Peninsula campaign. That's the goal. So trying to sort of smash through these armies on the way is how I'm attempting to go about that goal. And that requires some, let's call it dash. That's not exactly, that's where I want you to go. And I think, from what I know of Wilcox as an actual historical figure, this is sort of how he would have done it. He was wounded and captured at the First Battle of Bull Run, and he was later exchanged and went on to become a division commander, I believe, under Grant. I think he fought in the West for the most part. So he was a talented commander, and he was sort of schooled in the Grant style of just constant aggressive pressure against the enemy. Do not let up. As soon as you grab an advantage, hold it and use it to find more advantages. So I think this kind of rapid assault like this is very much his style. Both brigade hold it pretty well. They've got some pretty good cover from the woods. Unfortunately, can't really use my parrot rifles for much. 6th Ohio over here taking a beating. A lot of casualties from those guns. Casualty figures so far are not great. They are not super in our favor, but the tactical situation is an absolute nightmare for the Confederates right now, and it's only really, we're going to start seeing the victory till pick up really soon. I've even got quite a few of my men unengaged so far. Quite a few of my brigades taking an absolute shellacking. 1,500 men. Alright. More weirdness with handling cavalry. Most of the weirdness here is because of my slow computer. It just cannot handle the frame rate of having to support all these little units running around. It's just a total nightmare. None of their other men have arrived on the battlefield so far, and it looks like they've only got one more intact unit. One more unit that hasn't broken already, I mean. And, boy, I've taken quite a few more casualties than I wanted to take. They were extremely stubborn in this battle. Really tough one. It's going to stay minor victory. Again, there's no way I'm going to be able to inflict another several hundred casualties it would take for me to tick the needle over, unfortunately. And they're all retreating now, so they're all airbenders. So I couldn't do it even if I wanted to. Oh, man. So the fight outside Richmond is, if it's going to be as tough as this one, it'll be interesting to see, because this one was a very tough fight with a very stubborn enemy army. Took a lot more casualties than I wanted to. All right. Well, another victory at Fredericksburg. If I had the battle monuments on, I took them off because they clutter a bit. Oh, I do have them on. You can see we've got another 3 over here. And I'm stuck because my readiness has been so impacted now that I can't move. And we're probably likely going to see another several of those battles before the time is through. Oh, financial crisis for the Confederate States. Mostly, it's just waiting for the readiness to tick back up. Wilcox has been hit pretty hard. He no longer really is able to maneuver as much as he wants, and we've got these armies just buzzing around over and over. So the Army of the Potomac is coming after us again, and just bouncing around. Abandon that supply depot. Yeah, there we go. And, you know, honestly, it might be Joe Hooker who's able to fight his way through and into the peninsula. This is sort of an all-hands-on-deck type situation. And before I forget, especially since we have a lot more activity going on in the region, I'm going to go and make sure all of Harney's men are rifle-armed. And otherwise, you know, prepared a little bit better to deal with attacks. I'm going to order 41 days. Running out of Springfields, despite the fact that I'm just cranking them out as fast as my factories can. But I can upgrade quite a few of these artillery batteries too, if I can find them. Oh, I only have 10 Napoleons left, unfortunately. Look at this glorious mess over here. 4 Confederate armies. Many of them not terribly big. I mean, the Army of the Shenandoah and the Army of the Northwest are both quite large. I've whipped these guys enough that I doubt they're going to be really influencing anything in the near term. Abandon that depot. And yeah, it's just waiting, hoping I can get Wilcox up to readiness in time. Oh, and he has taken a brutal beating. But let's do some personnel changes real quick. So like I said, I want to promote Richardson. Whoops. Let's see if we can replace him with anybody, someone who's any good at all. down to lieutenants, scraping the bottom of the barrel. Pope. He's all right. Bernard's good. Yeah, I'm going to replace Bernard. Not with Andrew Porter, not with Winfield Scott, but with Israel B. Richardson. He's going to take the division. And Bernard, I'm going to put in charge of the Corps of Engineers over here. So Stevens is pretty good. But I want John G. Bernard to take it. Now that he's had some time commanding a brigade, he's got quite a lot of good experience. Sherman is almost at yellow readiness. Army of the Potomac coming back again. Watch them bounce away. Yep, they are not quite sure where they're going. Our finances are doing well again, that we're buying back some of our bonds, so that's always good. And you know, I have to wait until the end of this siege, but as soon as this is over, as soon as it's done, if it's victorious, I'm going for an emancipation, because I do not want to end the war without it. If we're defeated, we have to wait for another victory of some excellence in order to release that. Because again, this is a bit of a role-playing campaign, and we want to do this from a position of strength. We don't want it to look like a desperate move from an army that can't win. Okay. Sherman is ready enough that he can engage in a fight when he gets there. And unfortunately, Wilcox is not yet. But we've got Hooker. And if I were to do something sort of... We could be real cheesy here. And what we could do is put Hooker in the Army of the Shenandoah, which would increase the Army of the Shenandoah's total fighting power to about 60,000. And that would mean better coordination between these armies as I head down into the peninsula here. It would also mean an absolutely enormous battle. And I think that's a decent enough way to head this campaign toward a conclusion. The only thing I'm reticent about is I think that if I transfer Hooker into the Army of the Shenandoah now, it'll make Wilcox's readiness even worse. I'm gonna see what happens. Pause this real fast. The 5th Corps has arrived. Manage army transfer. Okay. That was pretty seamless. And they are in. It did not impact it at all. Check that out. I do have some unhappy soldiers in the army as a whole, but that's coming from Hooker. 4th Indiana, 1st Maryland, 3rd Maine Light. Unhappy with their commanders. That's not that big a morale drain. It's a 1% morale drain. Man, I really... Oh boy, there's even more down here. And it looks like they're coming up too. Army of Northern Virginia, 12,000. Boy, what a mess. What a mess. I've got to go for it. It's saved the Union time. I'm gonna bring Hooker and Sherman basically into Richmond. I still don't think I can move Wilcox, but we're gonna get them involved. We're gonna get them to toss in. There we go. Okay. 5th Corps Army of the Shenandoah is in contact with the Army of the Shenandoah. We're going to have a battle of about 30,000 men or so. So Army of Hooker and Sherman will both be on the field, and Wilcox will arrive in 2 hours. If I win this, I will basically lift the siege on the peninsula, and I will likely capture Richmond. Okay, folks, I'm really sorry about this, but I made a big mistake. I recorded nearly 2 hours of campaign and battle stuff, mostly literally this battle, with just audio. I had my OBS on the wrong settings, and it only recorded the audio of my game, and so you basically have a whole lot of silence, and then occasionally me talking. You don't even have game audio. So let me explain the situation here. This is the Battle of Rocket's Landing. This is May 21st, 1862. This is the sort of long-awaited siege battle between the Army of the Potomac and all of the various secessionist forces clustered around Richmond. So Wilcox's army, the Army of the Shenandoah, has come down from the north, and it kicked out, it had a couple of small battles that were anticlimactic, I guess, so they weren't super exciting to watch anyway. The first battle had just a Confederate withdrawal as soon as I captured the victory point, and the next one had just a very short skirmish before they withdrew. So none of that was terribly exciting. A bunch of Confederate armies withdrew, and now I'm having this rather widespread sort of running battle here with the various secessionist forces. 71,000 or so, 72,000 of mine, and 68,000 of the enemy. Now, I actually had to stop and save this battle because it was running so poorly on my computer that I literally couldn't give orders. It was so choppy and so awful that I could not actually give any orders. So I stopped in order to restart my PC in order to get the performance of the battle command and everything back up, and I discovered that I had been recording nothing but a blank screen. So you're going to see the climactic conclusion of this Peninsula campaign right outside Richmond here, with hopefully the ability for me to actually give orders and command my troops, and hopefully a thing. So we've got the sort of main body of Confederates came down against McClellan's entrenchments here. We had the Army of the Shenandoah, which deployed up here, march all the way down this way to start engaging some of the more westerly elements of the Confederate line. We're pushing them back right now. We actually just took a chunk of casualties from enemy Gatling guns that were placed in here. And we've got a third rebel corps that's coming in from, again, the sort of west and north. So I've got a couple of divisions down this way that I'm probably going to have to swing up north to deal with this, and I'm going to try to bring in McClellan's men to sweep up northward this way. So that is the situation as it stands right now, and we are right in the middle of the action, so let's just get things started. So the performance of my PC has improved slightly. That's good. But it's still going to be probably quite choppy. All right, let's get... I don't think I need square quite yet. Honestly, if the 10th Pennsylvania, if Churchill routes, that's not that bad. But doubt they will. So, again, we've actually routed quite a few of the Confederates, but their morale has gone up like crazy. When they started, it was about 30%. It's now at 42%. So they have had pretty significant morale increase over the course of this battle. Let's swing them to straddle this road. I'm going to bring the 3rd Division, put the 3rd Division in a single line. Alright, this is, if you were watching my tutorial campaign, you know that Churchill over here has been in his share of really hard fights. This is not the first time that his brigade has been taking an absolute pounding. Oh, this is buttery smooth compared to where it was just a few moments ago. If I do most of my commanding on the map like this, it'll likely improve my performance slightly. Alright, you do not need your skirmishers anymore, so get them back in. As soon as Clark breaks here, who do you belong to? Get back in. As soon as Clark breaks here, I'm going to take the 2nd New York and the 1st New Jersey and charge these guns. They'll likely break pretty soon. 2nd Michigan under Buell, having a crisis in morale. Again, I mentioned this in the other version of the recording that didn't survive, but a lot of the reason I've got some broken units here is because this is the army that has been basically in a siege situation for the last couple of weeks. And so transferring out from that, wow, I still have smoothbore musket armed men in this army. That's pretty wild. But yeah, that's one of the reasons that I've got some brigades with quite poor morale. Making quite a lot of progress, and it looks like they're probably starting their withdrawal. Sometimes hard to tell because the AI does like to just sort of recollect its men, which is fine. But they still have some pretty potent, a pretty potent division or two that haven't made their appearance on the battlefield quite yet, and I don't want to make the mistake of thinking that they're out of the fight until I'm absolutely certain that they are. Let's speed things up a little bit. I still would like to capture these guns. I'm not sure how likely that is, but I would like to do it. So showing that there are enemy artillerists here on the map, but it's not actually showing me where they are. That's pretty bizarre. But I'm going to bring Richardson's division up more aggressively. Who do you belong to? 4th Division. Let's have them advance. Yeah, they've got a bunch of their brigades that are withdrawing from the field at this point. So, right now, it's mostly just an attempt to inflict as many casualties as I possibly can in the time I have remaining. You know, 14% casualties against an army of about 70,000 is not so bad. Oh, Meade's broken. The German rifles have broken. That's too bad. And we are going to run out of daylight before too long. End of the day, and withdrawal. So 14,000 out of 68,000 employed, 4,500 on my side. And the Battle of Rocket's Landing, this long, drawn-out siege, is finally over. Victory at Rocket's Landing. The game says it's a minor victory, but given the fact that these are the armies standing in between me and Richmond, I don't think that's quite so minor. So all of these armies were engaged, and all of these armies are withdrawing. And I'm going to take McClellan and move him up to Richmond. So this, in the strategic situation, national morale 51 for the rebels. And capturing Richmond is going to reduce that by 20. And that is that is a major victory by every objective measure. That's a major victory. We are going to capture their capital, and the war at this point is basically over. So we'll wait till this is going to trigger. And here we go. Richmond falls. Confederate capital taken. The president flees. Southerners in shock. So let's pause real quick here and take a look. So they've down to 29 national morale. So basically what I have to do is capture a couple more southern cities. Alright, yeah. Let's take the 2nd Corps and chase the army in Northern Virginia down a little bit. Or win a couple of major victories. And that's war over. And this is June 26th, even though the battle was giving it... Oh, you know what? That's interesting. So the battle was given as March 25th or something like that, right? Because that was when that siege was begun. So almost exactly like the actual Peninsula campaign, McClellan shored himself up on the Chickahominy and sat there for like a month, not doing anything. And when he finally sort of bestirred himself to go after Richmond, he got into Seven Pines, and then Seven Pines? Tall Pines? Whatever that battle was. It had pines in the name. And then was involved in the 7 Days battles, which, that was when Lee took over from Johnson, and then the Peninsula campaign failed, right? It was a dismal failure. So we've had something similar to that, except that we won. And we won because we have better armies that actually marched down from the capital down here to Richmond. So what this means sort of for this fictional end of the war is that McClellan was able to succeed in what he wanted to do, which was to end the war without addressing slavery. And the fact that we're able to capture Richmond now in this position means that, the rebellion will probably die down. I mean, by the mechanics of the game, the rebellion will die down, right? 4 points. That's a couple of battles and a couple of towns taken. And I mean, I could probably push the Hampton Division away, even with just my Department of the Capital. They've got such poor morale that might do it itself. I can send one of these corps down here and kick out these like sort of wounded, hurt armies and just force them away. It's the end of the war. And this was essentially what McClellan wanted, right? This was McClellan's sort of messianic vision for him being the savior of the Union, which was to, again, restore it back to exactly the way it was before the war started. Don't address slavery at all. But if you do, address it politically after the war ends. But given that this is just going to restore the status quo ante, who knows what might happen? Who knows what might have happened? We can ask these counterfactual questions all the time. And it's sort of an interesting question, but it's also sort of not, right? Because, it's every sort of white supremacist's dream to think about what might have happened if the Confederacy won the Civil War. And I think this is a pretty similar question. Not if the Confederacy won, but what if they got thoroughly trounced really quickly? What would that have done to slavery? What would that have done to the country? Would it have restored just that tension and those decades of political infighting and violence and radicalism? Right, John Brown was a product of this uneasy truce between the South and the North, and the Fugitive Slave Act was a compromise between Southern slaveholders and Northern abolitionists. And I guess not Northern abolitionists in the Fugitive Slave Act. They opposed it violently much of the time. But, you know, what might the country look like if the Civil War didn't get to a point where it addressed slavery? And it's the victory of this Peninsula Campaign, even fictionally in this case. But if McClellan had been almost anyone else, right? If McClellan had been somebody who's a little bit more aggressive or a little bit more bold or a little bit more worth taking risks, or maybe if Johnson hadn't been wounded and Lee hadn't taken over at the critical time that he did, would we have been looking at a restoration of the Union with slavery as unaddressed? That would have just been relegated to politics for the next 20 or 30 years? Would we have seen another civil war in the next few years? Like, that without addressing the central tension that led to the Civil War, we don't really know what would have happened. And, in the end, it's a good thing, probably, that the Peninsula Campaign turned out to be an unmitigated disaster for the Union Army. It prolonged the war. It got a lot more people killed, but it forced the country to address slavery, which was the central issue of the entire war. It was the central cause of the war. And if the war had ended without addressing that, I don't really know what the country would look like now. So I don't know. But I mean, I think this is basically the conclusion of the Peninsula Campaign, of my weird little attempt to to replay, I guess, to role play as McClellan and to role play as a slightly more successful Army of the Potomac in Grand Tactician Civil War. So, I mean, I'm not going to prolong it. I don't think it's very interesting to get into more battles and whatnot, even if the rebels kind of recklessly hurl themselves at me more and more and more. So I'm going to end it. I'm going to pause the game and end it, but thanks for joining me on this goofy little thing. I might do more of these little short kind of in-between campaigns later on. I've got a couple of other things I'd like to test, sort of as I'm going on in my tutorial campaign. So we'll see. I think this was kind of fun. I thought it was an interesting little experiment, and I'm going to end this now, and I'm going to go back and reload the save before those last few battles and trigger a disaster, withdraw all my armies so that I can prolong this campaign for the sake of the tutorial. So thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you thought in the comments.